And for those who don't know, hello, I am Dick Miller. Joe Miller is next to me, and a bunch of other people who are regulars with the uh, FOSS user group in Natick, Massachusetts, USA, are here today. And for those who aren't watching today, who are watching in the future, hello to you too. Now or in the future, you can go to NatickFOSS.org, NatickFOSS.org, and you can find the link to link in live today, link in just as a viewer today, or link in anytime in the future to see what we did today. Good. Welcome. We're talking about FOSS, free open source software. It's wonderful. It's free. It covers about everything you can imagine, and you can afford to try it. Online, you can download most anything, and we'll be doing a few things to give you clues today. We'll also be talking a little differently than at most of our meetings, because today's agenda winds curiously back and forth between a number of topics and themes that show up in odd places. For example, I will start today's talk in a place we don't normally begin, and that is last week's news was largely occupied by a ship that turned into a cork in the bottle. It's got a lot to do with things we do in ways you might not have thought of yet. So let's go take a look at that very briefly. Firstly, we'll switch back to where, with a little luck, I can bring up my favorite photo program, which is Photox. Here it comes, and in it, I didn't take these photos. I'm kind of glad I didn't. This is an almost brand new container ship filled with containers. Well, not quite filled, it can go higher. And it's about 4 times as large as they were 10 years ago. And there are some small canals, as we learned about, compared to these huge container ships. The Ever Given is registered a flag of convenience in Panama, like it says there. But it's not really from Panama. It was built in Japan. It's leased out to a company in Taiwan that runs it. They've got a German company advising them on how to run it. And the German company leased a crew entirely from India. And there's a few more countries involved. So you can't even tell where it comes from in the simple sense of the term. That's going to become important because it got stuck. And you and we saw these pictures of this large crane working on it and trying to get it loose. And somehow the large crane got smaller as you saw the whole picture. The ship is huge. If you laid the Empire State Building alongside of it, it would be the longer of the two. The ship is higher than the Empire State Building is high. What's more, it's about equivalent in its other 2 dimensions as well. It's big. When it veered in a narrow part of the Suez Canal with no double passage, it was longer than the canal was wide, by far. So it lodged in crosswise with the current running through and holding it in, and it plowed its bow into the far shore, I guess the near shore at the time. And its bow has a big bulb just under the water projecting forward, much larger than you would expect. That makes for efficiency underwater. It saves about 15% on fuel to go the same speed. It's a good trick, except when you ram into the side of a canal. It dug in deep. And here they are with tugs trying to pry it out and cranes trying to dig it out. and people shoving on one side and pulling on the other side, and nothing's budging. Well, finally it budged, it got loose, and there was still a lot more to be done. As it got loose, there's the first sign we got showing the red arrow pointing to it in the Suez Canal. And under that, it says, underway using engine. That was big news. It took a week to put that sign up. And it was done in a very careful and lucky as well way that didn't create much extra damage, but the extra damage is still coming in. First of all, we're just barely getting rid of the piles of ships you can see at the two ends of the Suez Canal. And there's a lot more piling up in every port beyond there and hovering out further in the oceans, waiting for their chance to use a canal that's totally blocked. So that's just been getting back somewhere near to normal flow. But what is not, just like this blockage, is the blockage is going to be years in the courts. Legally, we don't know who owes what to whom, but the numbers are going to go into the billions of dollars. A lot of places can't afford not to argue with those prices, and we'll be hearing from them. So this is a block up of a bottleneck point in a network, the network being all the shipping lanes in the world. And it's a particular bottleneck. There aren't that many of them. I think there's less than a dozen. And when they're controlled, whether on purpose or by accident, by something else, we pay heavily. We'll come back to this a little later. I just want to point out, passing, there are a lot of explanations for what messages you can draw from this. This may not be one of them, but it's interesting nonetheless. So I thought that was worth putting in too. You'll get a lot of false clues on a lot of, well, that was true, wasn't it? But it's not necessarily linked. And we'll be getting a lot of that as these lawsuits come up, and everyone's trying to prove their client was wronged by that other client on purpose. They didn't do something properly, and they owe. Pointing fingers afterward is a very popular activity. Having said that, we'll come back to this a little later to show you some tools I use. They're nice. But what does it have to do with free open source software? And what does it have to do with the internet, where things also get blocked every so often? We'll be looking today. Let's go back. And on the agenda, I want to talk first, but I'll be bouncing around. But, well, I guess I talked first about a huge container ship, Ever Given, blocked Suez Canal. And tonight or tomorrow morning, we will have links online for all of these locations. You can click and read the details. Try to pick particularly useful ones. And I'll be coming back there later to show you the tools we used. Meanwhile, the FOSS news for the week was a little different. Richard Stallman is a famous name in the free open source activities. An early believer, an early helper. GNU Linux is his creation originally and his group's creation ever since, and with him participating. And he started the Free Software Foundation. And Richard Stallman is fairly extreme on the spectrum between proprietary software, where someone owns it and it's not you, and your ability to get your hands on it and how you can use it are very limited, and free open source software, where we all own it. We can use it any way we like. We don't have to pay for it. And what's more, we're free to take it and change it either for a whole different kind of program or just to make a better version of the same program. We can do it with the group that's offering it or as a separate offering, what's called a fork of the program, as a fork in the road. Uh, as a result, free open source software evolves a lot more rapidly and creatively than if it's under any one group's control. Well, Richard Stallman thinks that's so good that everyone ought to be using it. The other stuff ought to be obsoleted or who knows, maybe even outlawed because it's attempting to slow down the delivery of these good products. So, Richard Stallman is a hero in this process, but unlike many other players in the open software business, he's also the enemy of some proprietary groups which are finding they have to somehow embrace open source software because it's becoming that real and that common. They can't ignore it. And I think I will shift from this very quickly now to one of the other many threads.
What, you're
Because
going to show them the cartoon?
not yet.
Okay.
Dick, could I interrupt?
Beg pardon?
Could I interrupt? All I'm seeing is the ship in the shore. Have you changed the screen?
Oh, I thought you were seeing.
You may be stuck because it's coming to me.
I am seeing exactly what I'm supposed to
I've got to turn my sign off.
It says that your connection is poor, so it's probably stopped.
Can you try to just log in again? That may clear it for you. Or waiting may clear it for you.
Okay, because I've seen it poor before, but it's always changed. I can see.
I'm observing it on my computers and on Jill's computer, which is not linked to me any differently than you are.
Okay,
So
good.
Jill's computer is showing it. I presume most of you are seeing the agenda, correct?
I'm fine.
Good. So I think just log out and log in if you're not seeing the agenda.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Now,
Here, not junk.
what?
Cook up here, not junk.
While we're at it, technical thing, Dave Hunt, try unmuting your video. Oh, maybe log in again?
Yep. Okay. Meanwhile, the European Union confirms open source powers the internet. Let's take a look at that. And a couple of seconds time lag, but only that. Okay. And the EU not only likes the internet, they now have an annual EU open source policy summit. They're very serious about it. And some municipalities and districts within the EU have switched to official government use of open source. Everyone gets it for free. Everyone can update for free. And they like it a lot. Well, so what? Back to my agenda. And this is big news for open source, but what difference does it make and who cares? Well, I'll go to one more that's in the news this week. Microsoft Exchange servers have been very popular out in the commercial world, and they've been losing market share rapidly to open source alternatives, the EU being one example of that. But they also got hit by some malware, which turns out to have been running wild for 2 months before it was spotted. Then it was spotted. Then Microsoft gave out some rather complicated instructions on how to fix it. And a lot of the servers didn't have professionals available to follow those instructions.
Excuse me. Why is picture of Algot on my screen?
I don't know. I saw this here a minute ago.
Yeah, it was there.
I am totally baffled.
You probably clicked on him.
Um,
Can we click on the Dick Miller one? Let's see if that solves it. But let me ignore that and go back to where I was. So, Microsoft Exchange servers, the ones that didn't get fixed right away, stayed open even longer. Meanwhile, a lot of malware, a lot of copying of critical stuff took place by bad people. And Microsoft put out a one-click solution to upgrade, but by the time it got used, there was no malware on a lot of those servers. So this is a spiraling, continuing problem. This is from a week ago, this one. But yesterday, maybe I'll swap for that one tonight. Yesterday, I saw one which was current and said, the problem is still ongoing with too many servers. Well, I brought up one example, a ship blocking a canal, as an analogy. The other one we've been wrestling with for a year now is the coronavirus pandemic. And again, like with that, if you don't get enough places safeguarded, you're still in danger. You have to get beyond a critical mass in the safe side. And we're not there yet on this. So one more analogy of that kind. Microsoft, as a result, is hurting two ways. Right now, they may be the guilty party when law comes to decide who owes money on some rather expensive problems. And in addition to all those things, the one they started with, their server business was losing way steadily to open source. What does this have to do with our story? Well, now we're ready to look at the Richard Stallman story, because Richard Stallman was kicked off his own free software foundation a few years ago. Actually, there were so many people complaining he should be kicked off that he resigned. But it's kind of like the political story you hear. And the bottom line is he's been doing things, but he hasn't been a member of the board, let alone the chairman of the Free Software Foundation, until they had their annual meeting a week or two ago. And at it, they and he announced that he'd be coming back on the board of directors. A lot of people cheered. And then the letters started coming in, and a petition with thousands of signatures saying, we've got to get rid of Richard Stallman. If you don't get rid of him, you should all resign for having allowed him back. What a terrible thing to do for open source software. Then people started looking at who was saying it, and it got more and more interesting. Turns out Microsoft was kind of in the middle of it. Turns out a lot of other groups that didn't sound like they were the main proprietary companies valued those companies' business or their donations to the group, and they were echoing some items. A petition with thousands of items had come in already, but one with twice as many quickly came back from the more open side of the open source community. So this is now a very volatile issue. Apparently, things will be staying with him on board. The Free Software Foundation will not be one of the ones that was taken over by big business. And it will be more representing us little folks out there and developers. Somebody's making a lot of, somebody's got a noise coming in. Will they please turn off their microphone? Might be a dog, might not. That I'm hearing.
So what you're saying is they have
So basically,
dueling petitions?
basically, the free software community is dueling with itself because large groups are manipulating one half of the story. So here's one little look at it from an inside view by a person who has complained. The attack on Richard Stallman is that he can't get along with trans people, which A, has very little to do with the software, and B, has nothing to do with Richard Stallman. And this is coming in from one of the trans people to explain that. It's a put-up job. It's a smear job. And a lot of people bought into it. And I think it's got a lot to do with some of these other stories. I have for you a cartoon to go with it. And the cartoon, which can be enlarged. For those of you who are looking on too small a screen, two guinea pigs are having a chat. The first one says, "You're either with us or you're against us." The second one, who looks to me a little bit like Richard Stallman, says, "What if I don't pick sides, but critically examine both and come to a nuanced, informed, unique, individual opinion?" And the first one says, "Kill the traitor." So this is somewhat exaggerated, but it's a lot of what's going on. Richard Stallman calls everything that's a problem and looks at it. And sometimes it's something that's in a corporate environment, you'd be more polite, you'd be more nuanced, or you just plain wouldn't touch it. You'd stay in lockstep with the corporate position. Richard Stallman's an independent. And when he thinks independently, he says what he thinks. I haven't found anything offensive that I've found so far, other than perhaps to me personally when I have the other side on a position. But his position is well explained and usually well defended with good facts, just like most of the rest of us. So that's how it fits in with.
I'm not sure I would paint such a rosy picture of Richard Stallman. He has...
Introduce yourself. Who's talking?
This is Dennis.
Okay. Hi, Dennis.
He has done great things, and he is a useful person to have talking about different things, but he does... His interactions with people can be problematic.
I totally agree.
He's sort of an agent provocateur.
So it's one of those things of, should he be in a position of leadership? I'm not sure that he should. If you want to still have him help out, do talks and stuff, that's fine. But you should also try to change his behavior to not be so abrasive to people and to stop offending certain groups.
I wonder, is he capable of such change?
That ship has sailed long since.
I think the answer is his position is that's your position. and he doesn't agree with you on that. If I were looking for a corporate chairman for a proprietary software company, he'd be the last person I'd choose.
And he's not a good chairman for a charitable.org that's trying to be a big tent and inclusive. He makes Linus Torvalds look polite and a people person.
Who is not a polite people person. And that's my point, too.
And by the way, I've known Richard longer than he's been famous.
Well, I think I quite agree. When our Miller Microcomputer Services was creating Forth software, our lead programmer was right in the same boat. He was wonderful, but he didn't come across as wonderful for many people. I can empathize on both sides. Do you really want to pull people like that out of the creative process, out of the stream that develops the creative process? My take would be, let the free software foundation be a solid foundation that's not involved in the other half of the argument. Let's keep that in our mainstream. Let's not be dominated by it, but let's keep it in our mainstream. Let's not depower it. Let's not throw it out. And I think we're going to get that. But we're all going to find out anyway.
Free Software Foundation has been failing to build a next generation of leadership for a decade now. The first job of any leader in a for-profit or a charitable is to be grooming your replacement. And when you have a founder for life structure, that doesn't happen. FSF had a golden opportunity to start to catch up on building a next generation of leadership when they were forced to sideline Richard. They failed to do that while he was gone, and they've brought him back, so it won't happen. This is very unfortunate for anyone who thinks Free Software Foundation should remain relevant. For those who think that the open source initiative has long since surpassed FSF, and the real work is being done by EFF and OSI, well, this is a sideshow and it doesn't matter.
Well, other comments? Okay. My final comment on the subject will be, we will find out. And as you pointed out, other groups are in there also. This is not affecting in the way the Suez Canal block was affecting. There are plenty of other canals. This is not a panic. However, shutting off creative people because they're not sufficiently, pick a word, PC, mature, oily, depends where you're sitting as to how you describe it. I think I'm very glad that Richard Stallman will have horsepower reattached to his contributions as well as those of others, not instead of others, but in addition. And that's an important piece of the free software concept. Not let anyone get in charge.
As regards the canal,
Yep.
there are portions of the canal which have two parallel channels.
Right.
The northern section of the canal had a second auxiliary channel added. Yes.
Not entirely parallel, even in the northern section, but it has frequent dual channel sections, and then there's the lake in the middle. You know, it's just bad luck that the big wind hit it before it got to those sections.
Not clear the wind was the contributing factor. Other ships, equally wind prone, made it through, and in the material
all disasters are fault chains of more than one factor, yes.
Not necessarily. It can be one factor, and they were claiming it was at first.
No.
But let's not get locked into the wrong channel here. I will be providing information where you can watch the track of the ship beforehand. It was bad news, and it was bad news the day before as well.
Thank you for providing evidence supporting my statement.
The statement is that there's multiple possibilities anywhere. The winds may not have been the factor, and the dust storm may not have been, the sandstorm may not have been the factor. You're right. often there's more than one factor. That's not a rule either.
If you have a system which allows a single failure with no cascading failures to cause a major disaster, you have really screwed up. And that really screwed up is the second contributing factor. QED.
I would say the ultimate screw up in the canal situation was allowing ships to go in that physically could block the canal. After that, you were playing on the odds on every single thing you argued for. That's the only thing you could have done right to avoid the building up of issues.
On high wind days, a ship of that height and length should not have been allowed in.
That's what I said.
Not exactly.
When we do a full debate on that, we'll cover it all. I think you'll find my point well covered in the appended stuff later.
Oh, okay.
Onward and forward. Point on the canal again. Why did the ships get so large? Answer is it was cost effective. But the more important answer is we always have checks and balances against cost effective. They were not allowed to work. The ships were made larger by the shipping companies, and when the canals objected, they eventually just had to pay a lot of money later to expand. Again, the analogy to something proprietary running the whole show, something without sufficient check and balance. Now, back to the real world we talk about, and the corporation smear is quite obvious. We've been talking about why it might be appropriate to complain, but the smear effect on it and who did it and who didn't do it is getting really interesting. So you might want to read that article later. On all of the above issues, including the canal, and if you want to throw them in, religion, which horse is going to run the race, and politics worldwide. I want to introduce the SAP test. How to avoid being a sap. The SAP test, coming up. There you have. You should mostly have it now. SAP test is a method to apply fake or fact, says the illustration. Help your family know science fact from science fiction. This one grew out of COVID, another parallel universe, but boy, it applies everywhere. SAP is a tool you can use. You ask 3 sets of questions. The S stands for sources. The A stands for author. Where did the claim come from? Can you even tell who the author is? On the internet, that's a good question. And purpose. What was the purpose of posting it? Very, very good article on how you can analyze, and you'll find out it's excellent for analyzing everything we've just been talking about. If it doesn't have some hinge of truth on it, it better be a very popular lie. Usually it's a hinge of truth, but bending it for other purposes. Whoops. Not where I want to be. There's where I want to be. Okay. So I very much recommend the series of tests for almost anything you're trying to measure that you're reading, you wonder, or you're listening to, and you're wondering, how much can I lean on it? What are the other stories? How do I weigh them? How do I become that other animal that wants to be independent? Okay, I want to move on now to FOSS history. The birth of BASIC. It was 1964. over half a century ago. And it had two excellent videos that came out of it, one of which I will attach to this. And it's well worth a watch, particularly for the folks in our group that remember back when. And we are of that vintage. We remember back when. In fact, we have friends who were at Dartmouth then, right then. And we were watching what they were doing. We also had friends at MIT, and the Dartmouth process was taken from MIT as a cooperative project, but MIT was working with computer students. Dartmouth worked on how you could get computers available to and workable by non-computer majors. Everyone at Dartmouth learned how to use BASIC and how to use computers. And this was when computers cost a fortune. If you're lucky, your school had one. And how do you do that? So BASIC wasn't just the story of a computer language. It was the story of moving computers to the people. Has a lot to do with what we now call FOSS. And it could have been copyrighted. It was basically copyrighted for the public. What nowadays in FOSS we call a copyleft. And so this is early history of the FOSS movement. Take a look. I think you'll like it. We may be back next month with the second video just to follow up on it.
I forwarded one of those two videos, I don't know which one, to my mother, because she'd worked with some of the principles of what became BASIC previously on other projects at Dartmouth before I was born.
Elegant. I'm looking forward to talking to our friends that were semi-involved. They were there and in it. One of them may have been helping to develop it as well.
Probably not as a sophomore.
I'm not thinking of who you're thinking of.
Oh.
I'm thinking of at MIT. But let me see. So that's it. It's available for follow-up later. And I think it's going to turn out to be much more central to where we are than many of you thought beforehand. So I offer it with that in mind. Now, there's big stuff going out there in news. I'm going to hop to one in order to come back to there. In hot software, there's Ubuntu 21.04. Ubuntu has taken to having strange names. They're up to H, and this one's going to be the hirsute hippo, the hairy hippo. And Ubuntu apparently is the most popular version of Linux on desktops at this point. And with that in mind, the one that we tend to major in, put our clients and friends into, and it's not the only one talked about here, but I'm leaning in on it heavily this month because next month we'll have a new version of it, and a big new version of it at that. So I'm going to go through some of what that story's about, and where Jill and I are perched in the middle at the moment, and nobody else has to be unless they choose to be, but it's kind of interesting. For people who don't know the inside story, Linux evolved itself from something else and has evolved into hundreds, if not 1,000 or more versions of Linux. It's hard to tell what a version is these days because they derive from each other and maybe 95% identical, and yet do something a hell of a lot better that makes them valuable somewhere. So we picked this fairly mainstream one called Ubuntu, but since 2018, we personally have not liked its new choice of a graphical front end. the desktop environment through which you see it and see everything else on your computer. Uh, they had developed one themselves. So I'm going to look, first of all, at the fact that we're about to get the next one under hot software. I'll go back there later. It is due to be released on April 22nd. And today they did post the beta version. Theoretically, you could load that today. And there's a week starting today in which they're inviting interested people to do just that. Install it, try it. If you have complaints, complain about them fast this week. They'll work with you. They want to smooth it for release on the 22nd, and they want any significant changes to be done way before that. So that's the time frame in which people who opt to can get involved early. Well, now back to the history. What is this all about? For us over here, it's about the Unity graphical interface. That's the rough edge that we're interested in. As of a few weeks ago, I loaded a version of it, a little pre-beta, obviously, and I couldn't get Unity to load smoothly into it. It would do some things, but not everything. And everyone and his brother was working on it. So I put it aside. I decided I would not give you a preview this month, but instead give you problems about. But one of the problems is the greatest strength of free software. It can fork. It can develop a lot of flavors. Unity was developed by Canonical, the place that develops Ubuntu. Couldn't be more at home on Ubuntu. They originally called it Ayatana. And if you're into Ayatana, if you're into Buddhist philosophy, you'll know what that means. And if you aren't, look up Buddhist plus Ayatana. I think you'll be interested in why they picked it for a name. Nifty. In any case, then they changed the name to Unity. And how can you go wrong with a name like that? And it turns out in several ways. But anyway, it was the default graphic user interface in Ubuntu, starting in 2011 and lasting until the release of the new major version of Ubuntu in April of 2018. And in the meantime, people have been pushing Ubuntu to move to GNOME, a separate project, well handled in general, but not nearly as nice, in my opinion, for new users and clients. So we've gravitated away from GNOME. But Ubuntu, in fact, grew out of GNOME. It's at home with GNOME in many, many ways. Why am I emphasizing major releases of Ubuntu? Ubuntu is on a time schedule. That's not necessary, but it's the way Ubuntu does it. And they issue a new release every half year in April and in October. You know when it's coming. You don't have to go to it, or you can go to it a year later if you wish. They maintain older ones longer. But the half-year ones are, to some people, trials. They're still test versions. They want the long-term release version, and that's the one that comes out even numbered years. And 2016, 2018, 2020 were ones of those. So this 2104 isn't even going to be one of those. Nonetheless, it's got some nice new features. We'd like to use it. We'd like to be at home with it. And we've been holding off for Unity to catch up. Well, look what happened in the meantime. Unity was at 7 when it got dropped by Ubuntu for the mainstream. It still stayed aboard as an option. You could load it with a click. And it grew to Unity 7.5 which I'm still today using comfortably with last fall's Ubuntu uh, uh, 20.10. So perfectly at home with it. I gave it a link that's live on purpose for people that want it. But a few weeks ago, I was having trouble with the current version I had of the next Ubuntu. Meanwhile, people have been improving it. They improved it and gave it names including Unity 8, Lomiri, Ubuntu Touch, and again, just Unity, Ubuntu Touch Unity, and Next and Unity X. A lot of different names. So a lot of Unities. I'm sorry, Ubuntu Touch is one. Unity Next is the name of another, and Unity X. And also, not the only group that did it, but a group we're looking at closely right now. A group took Ubuntu, and like many groups do, they offered a flavor of it with their twists in it. And this one's called Ubuntu Unity OS. And what do you know? It includes Unity, updated to run with the latest one. They're on exactly the same time schedule right now. They think they released their beta yesterday, and they'll be releasing their final, they think, on April 22nd. So if we can't get something like Unity 7.5 running on the standard Ubuntu, then we'll take a very hard look at the Ubuntu Unity OS. That's why that one has a live link as of today. Some of you may want to look at it also. So we've been watching and waiting at the moment, and it makes sense. Meanwhile, there's places that aren't going to move up from the 2018.04, the one that came out in April, until one comes out in 2022. They want to play the long game, whatever. Then they'll go to the one that's 2 years ahead instead of 4 years ahead. So places can be very conservative or not. Ubuntu does maintain the older ones. So that's not, it's confusing at first, but it's for a very good reason. You can have your cake and eat it. We're perched in the middle right now. Here is where the new one will show up under hot software, not under the talk about history. But I wanted to go through the history of it because that's important too. It explained to a lot of curious people why there's so many flavors of it. There's something else going on. These are the ones that are derived from GNOME. They're front ends, desktop environments, not the Unity gaming platform, which is getting very popular right now. And that is currently supported in the Ubuntu Software Center. The Unity I'm talking about no longer is, as of right now. You can't get it through the Ubuntu Software Center. I expect it'll be back very shortly, but I don't know. And wouldn't you know, somebody has a Unity OS, which as far as I can tell has nothing to do with Ubuntu at all. So it's not those. Now that background history is gone, and you, like we, can either wait an hour, a day, a month, or 2 years, as you like, or ignore it entirely. I am on a Unity desktop now, and for those who like it or think they may like it, I want to point out something I found interesting very recently, and it's because on my desktop, find a desktop, I tend to support, just a minute, last month and for the months prior to that, when I looked at my desktop, you saw what we call a launcher down the left side. A lot of colored little icons. Now I bump into the left side and I bring it up. And I go away and it goes away. And that's nice except for one thing. The one thing is if I go down and I'm about ready to click on this one, I'm almost ready to click, it might disappear on me. That's because I happen to be running. Oh, I didn't want that. Sorry. I'm looking for a desktop icon down there, and it's moved up on. Whoops! It's moved up on me. And my desktop is showing a slideshow of my favorite photographs, mostly ones I took myself. I might add with a smartphone, not a Leica, and developed with Photox. All the ones you've seen are ones I did that way, and they're quite good. But sometimes I pick one someone else took, and I happen to be changing them, I think, once per 5 seconds. And that, in turn, is bouncing my launcher so it won't stay where I want to put it every time one of those changes. Now that I'm in it, you can see when it changes and that indeed is what's doing it. There it goes again. What can I do about that? If I want, as I did this month, to show my full width of the screen instead of losing a part of it to a distracting element, and yet I still have that degree of control. That was my puzzle, and I found a whole bunch of solutions. One of them is really simple. It's just stop the slideshow, pause it. I've paused it. It's not going to change anymore. And therefore, my sidebars won't change on me. Say I want to go to that one, just for example.
That's where you are.
Unless, again, I say, let's go for the slideshow. And that, again, will fold them. So that's one way to do it. But suppose I don't want to interrupt it. I just want to get past it. I found out a very interesting way to do it. And I didn't do anything to write this one. To start it, you do an Alt F1. Now it's out there. I've still got my changing background, but it's out there. There's a catch to this one. There's always a catch. Scroll down, and it's not scrolling down. How do I get past that? For this, about half a year ago, I showed you a trick that I can use. I took an existing icon and I adapted it for my own purposes, and it doesn't do anything. It's a marker, a separator tab. It says this section up here is different. I'm now going to tell you about this section here. If I click on one of those, nothing happens except for one thing. Eureka, we found it. This is the best of all practical worlds. It allows me to keep it out, not disappearing. I do have to move in time to get there, but it's not going to disappear on me when the screen changes. So that's my secret for today. I like it a lot. Took an old trick of mine, a new trick I learned, which is the Alt F1 keyboard combination, and use it to control that lovely technique. Now that I've got it, I've lost it again. I've put it away so I can see the pretty slides. Now I'll go in and work without it, which I can normally do just fine anyway. And go to whatever I want. Say, play a game, go into my Photox, any of the above. Done with that one. A little trick for those who like to use it, or those who might consider using it. You can look it up here later if you forget it, or ask me and see if I remember it. Okay, we have covered the introductory on history. We've gotten to 2 more. No, just a minute. I finished on history. On hot software, we're up to cheese and webcomoid. And I'm not going to tell you about them yet. Again, intertwining. I'm going to tell you about hot hardware instead. Hot Hardware, $13 can buy
need to
you.
go to.
Just a minute. Can you go on with your face view and hold it up, Joe?
Well,
And can I?
wait a minute.
And
Apparently not. I mean,
endoscopes.
people can see me over there, but since I don't have my microphone
Better
on,
no.
that's a no.
Okay.
I can tap on your face and see it big.
Oh, okay. Can you see the end?
Hold it further back toward you. Can you see what Jill is demoing? Can you put a piece of paper behind it, Jill?
I've got it in front of the
Yeah, it's fine.
Looks good.
Okay.
It looks good. Looks
Good. Okay. Put this on the end of
and this
3
is the
feet
other end.
or 6 feet or 20 feet of cable, and now you've got something. And you can make them out of floppy wire, or you can make them out of semi-stiff wire, as we have here. Jill can hold up the end of it by not going to the end of it. And they're also called borescopes, endoscopes, or snake cameras, because you can snake them up a tube or through the internals of your fancy desktop computer without opening it all the way up. Just find a slot in and go look at something on the inside.
You want to plug it in and
Well, they've been interesting for a long time. Yes, please. You want to do it on mine?
yep.
Wait a minute. You want it on yours, don't you?
Why?
Good argument.
Then I have to
Good
share
argument.
my
Let's see what
screen.
happens.
You're going to bring up cheese.
I am going to go into my fancy sidebar and go find cheese. Say cheese. There it is. Did I miss it?
Apparently.
My timing was off. This time I'll find it and just go to it. Now click. And here comes cheese. I'll make it full screen. Cheese is a very simple webcam tool. It's fairly flexible, does a lot of good things. We are looking at my computer
Oh, my
with
computer.
we are looking on my computer with that endoscope that you can buy for $13, a little less, plus mass tax, delivered, and a lot less than that if you want to wait a month from China. And it's pretty sharp. It's not perfect, but when you get to where you want and steady it off and then focus, it's quite nice. Jill, go take a look from far back at your computer, just at the under the keyboard. The light part is speaker area with tiny holes in it. Now, Jill, approach those holes so you can see it. That's what it does with those holes.
If I can hold my hand
If Jill
steady.
could only hold her hand steady. Of course, you don't have to use your hand to use it. You can use a clamp. Move it and let go, and it'll stay where you want it. But this is just for a quick on the road.
And
It
the
comes
other
out quite
thing is,
sharp.
For
And it's got
instance, here's a USB port looking. Oh, wait a minute. Got to turn the light. It has an internal light that has 3 speeds.
3 intensities of light.
And
Why don't you aim it at the, Jill, why don't you aim it while you, oh, you are. Okay. I see where you're going here. Once you've got it, turn it off and then bring it up again. Back off a little. Looking at a connector.
And
So that's external lighting. And now we're adding internal
there's a super
built-in
bright.
lighting as well. So you can put this in
No light.
anything. Hint, it's waterproof. You can check your plumbing with it. And a lot of other purposes. This is very
This is
flexible.
my ear hole.
And you can adjust it to where it's reasonably sharp. And wait, there's more. Joe, where's the baggie it came in? Why don't you let go of it? Well, I can do this on yours, I guess. Let me see. Wait a minute. If you're in Linux, it comes with a disk that's totally useless, Windows and Apple. Of course, you can run it in Linux, putting in a layer for those, but you don't have to. It would give you a program analogous to cheese, so you don't care. And I'm looking for some other pieces to show off. Here they are. It comes with, let me get it sent the right way. This is good. If you can see, Joe,
Let's see if I can do it this way.
Oh, clever.
Wait a minute. Let me turn down the brightness.
Oh, well, then I can do it, Jill. In that case, I can do it, and I can coordinate.
Right.
And first thing I want to show you is how much can I get stable here without
You have
running.
to hold it away from a couple inches away.
Where am I? Yep, that's the one that's the one I'm after.
Comes out upside down like a microscope, so it's
You can flip that if you want.
takes a bit to get
Well,
used
you
to
can
it.
flip it like this if you want. So it's just the way it's bent that's doing that. But that's the way it's bent. Let me get these out. Have a chance. It comes with an accessory you can slip over it, and it puts a mirror out in front of it. Well, there's one integral piece now, and it looks out to the side, 90 degrees sideways instead of forward. So if you want to see the side of a pipe, for instance, can you do that? It's hard to see in there.
It's like those baggies, those fruit baggies at the.
And these are teeny tiny.
Wait a minute. Here's the mirror.
These are just tools you can use to clean it, add things, take things off. You can have this go in with it, as these are two separate tools. Either one can mount on it and do hooks. You can drag things out. You can scrape and clean things inside a pipe. This is the one I was telling you about.
The one that looks like a.
Joe, wait. This is a 45-degree mirror, which is going to catch the light coming in from the left from Tux, the Linux Penguin, and it's going to actually get a light coming in the side and sending it towards Tux, the Linux Penguin, who, once it's attached, will be its camera. So a quick example of that piece that comes with it. And then these extra
that
tools.
one has a magnet in it.
This one does?
Yes. No, the one I just handed you.
So this extra gidgee, wait a minute. I know you, there you go. This goes on it, and the far end of it also will magnetically pull things out.
What?
I think it's the camera that has the magnet on it, if I remember.
This is a magnet in there.
Okay. This one doesn't have one? I guess you're right. Okay. I'm going to give it all back. The point is you get a lot of ability to do things. Take this one. You get a lot of ability to do things for $13. And how to use it? The simple answer is Cheese. Cheese is a board in the Ubuntu Software Center, probably any other popular distro you're using. It will also be a board. It's a GNOME add-on, so you'll find it under GNOME also, and you can go to its own website and find it. And we'll send you that link to look it up. It's the easy way to get there for this $13 tool and other things that are useful. But in addition to that, I've demonstrated using Cheese. And by the way, Cheese is over here. And I like their sense of humor. First of all, you can add cheesy effects. But here's the one I really liked. I think this is the one. Addicted to webcams? You can't stop taking photos of yourself and your friends. The only reason you have USB ports is to attach webcams. They're ready for you. You can switch between them too, quickly and easily. And so on and so forth. Having mentioned that one, I'm not going to demonstrate webcamoid because I only just got told that if you're a power user, this blows all the others out the water. Webcamoid is available for, I think, any Linux and Windows and Mac. And they seem very serious about being complete. And it works well with it also. So maybe one of you or Jill or me will be demonstrating that on another month. Again, good for webcams, including endoscopes. I put it out here for all of us to learn more about it. Comes highly recommended.
Should I unplug this?
Sure. By the way, for those who don't already know what I'm doing here, my version of Linux comes with a built-in. You can build it into any version of Linux. On Ubuntu, if you do an Alt-Tick, the one above the tab. No, that's not what I meant. Help, where am I? I give up. I'm not doing it today. I have everything full screened. That's my issue. I can do it other ways. I've set up a key combination to do it this way, but I have multiple desktops, aka workspaces. In effect, I can take my computer desktop and split it into 4 or 2 or 10 or what have you. And then I can go to any one of those. That's the one we were looking at. Or I can go back in and go to any other one of those. This is back to my changing desktop wallpaper. And I haven't assigned anything to these windows, so they're just showing that wallpaper as it's changing. But that's how I've been keeping this handy while mixing a lot in my main screen. And it's very handy for doing lots of things. Once I have it set up as part of the deal in Ubuntu, and in Ubuntu with Unity as I'm doing it here, I can go to any one of them and I can use the key combination Alt, Control, and any one of the 4 arrow keys down in the lower right for me. So I'm in the upper right. If I do Alt, Control, left arrow, I go to the one in the upper left, and vice versa with the right arrow. And I see a little image of the 4 windows I'm dealing with as a little guide while I'm moving, so I know where I'm moving from and to. Just let go and I'm there. Let go and I'm there. Very handy to use. That's a new trick I'm using as part of my looking for a cleaner full screen look and still getting around handily. So I'm recommending it. And although I couldn't use my Alt Tick right above Alt Tab, Alt Tick, because I'm full screened, it works anyway in this new mode I just showed you. So a bunch of different ways to get there from here. When I put it in as a command, which I attached to Super S for screens. Super is what some people foolishly call the Windows key. Again, they shouldn't own your computer. And
Or the Mac key.
Or the Mac key. And Super S, they don't call it the Linux key. They're much nicer than the proprietary ones. But anyway, I assigned that with regular set of options for custom command keys. You can do that. And I have a toggle. It goes on or it goes off depending on which one it's in, to open it or to close it. So that's what I'm doing there. Very powerful combination of simple little tools. Recommended. And now I've covered hot software and a lot of hot hardware. Something else is going on out there. Those of you who deal with us as a company or listen long enough anyway know we favor buying used computers, and instead of saving money as the main goal, buying an unaffordable computer is the main goal for a very reasonable amount of money. We are playing on $2,000 range flagship computers for the company. Ours happened to be Hewlett Packard. And the flagship computer wasn't what we thought was worth paying for. But you get them a few years old, and they're down to a third or a quarter or better of that price. And because they're flagship computers, they have the newest features that weren't on the others yet. They won't go old as soon as you think. And they aren't going to wear out for a long, long, long time. These are the expensive corporation ones. So you couldn't afford one this good before. We typically pay $300, $350 for that $2,000 computer. Add on our expanded version of Linux with lots of good things and give a little get started training on it. And we sell those for $600 or $650, depending on the details of the hardware. And it's just a huge bargain. So we recommend that. Well, the big news here in hot hardware has to do with all the hardware. Whoops.
That's your cheese.
I have to close cheese, right. Or get away from it one way or another. That's good enough. eBay sellers embrace recommence amid the pandemic. Recommerce amid the pandemic. Recommerce, is that a program? Is that a website? Recommerce is my new handy dandy name for used goods. Recommerce. You're having a second commercial trip for the same item. Selling it used. Big deal.
So it's an analogy to regifting.
Oh yes,
Exactly.
This is the corporate name, I guess, for regifting. Well, regifting for money. And what's going on is really interesting. In this past 1 year period, 70% of the eBay sellers have become resellers as well. They've added used. Some were there already. They're not part of that 70%. 70% of the ones that weren't there just got there. What's going on? First of all, COVID virus is in the game. Two ways. It's closed down a lot of stores, and it's closed down a lot of income for a lot of people. But the second thing COVID did was made more computers important for more people than ever before. It's the socializing instrument. It's the, instead of your shoes, you've got a computer. It's how you see people. So,
and the third thing is to put a lot of people on the internet that hadn't been on very much before. So they're
leaning in. They're getting serious.
Customers are there.
Yep. So a lot of things changed all at once. They're all good for the internet. They're all potentially good for free open source software. But where they hit already in spades is that number that stared at me. I'm sure it's not unique to eBay, but eBay released the number on one of their discussions of their business channel, how it works. So this is not just hardware. This is all hardware we're talking about. Moving toward used, getting real serious. Now I am looking at hot internet, and Algot had a question Algot, are you there and ready to go with this one?
I am, thanks.
All right, I'm turning it over to you. Click on Algot and let's go see what Algot's got to say.
Okay. I'm here to talk about Dick's line item there for Get Together, Mastodon, Mobilizon. There was some concern that I introduced, I think, that maybe we should consider these as tools for use by the NatickFOSS group. I'm not entirely certain that that is a good idea, but I thought I'd still take the time today to talk a bit more about how to get yourself onto this particular thing we call Mastodon. What I'm going to do next is to share my screen, and that is this, an application window, which will be, where are you? There it is, sorry. Was left over on something else before I got here. All right. Mastodon is a social network like Twitter. The screen you're seeing right now is my particular view of the social network through a site with which I am associated called Mastodon Art. And my view is of several individual columns. It's not typical of the Twitter experience, which is just one column. I get a home column. I get a column where I can enter my own posts, which are text limited to 500 characters, because this is a thing called micro-blogging, as opposed to writing long-form blogs or talking about it in voice, which is another pathway, or using video, which is still another pathway, all of them considered social media. I like the format here because I get to keep track of who's responding to me through notifications. That's the next column over to the right. My local server is mastodon.art. It's got the local timeline. And then because I have interests in writing and poetry and the program known as Inkscape, I have columns devoted to those linked with what are called hashtags. And a few others from our group have decided that it's maybe a useful tool. This little article will be available, is not yet. It's going to be on my website under the heading of the NatickFOSS, where I have my demos located. It's just going to be available that way.
Well done.
The reason it's not yet available is that I'd like to mention that I know of, for people who have chosen to get themselves accounts, Dennis, in addition to myself, have been around on the social media area here for quite a while. He chose a different server. Dennis is called Dulcie as a username, and he is on freegamedev.net using software that is not Mastodon software. Similarly, Dave Hunt has an account. His interest in ham radio made him choose Mastodon.radio, along with Bill Rucker, who chose Mastodon.radio as the server to stick to start from. And those names that are associated with them are, I believe, the call signs for each of those gentlemen. The reason that I like this software is, number one, it's similar to Twitter. It's social media. It's a conversational experience, a space where I get to share some of my artwork and some of my writing. It's a federation of communities rather than a silo, though, meaning it's not under one website. It's a bunch of different locations on the internet. It is federated together through a particular protocol, a web protocol that happens to be called ActivityPub. And it was developed by a Boston-based programmer, Christopher Lemmer Weber, among others, and has been accepted by the WC3, which is the web coordinating body, as a standard. And a whole bunch of different servers and clients have been developed to let you connect to the entire thing, which is most commonly called the Fediverse because of being federated and not silo. Do any of those three guys have comments about their own use before I continue? Dennis, Dave, Bill?
You are correct.
Are you all comfortable with Mastodon, or is there still some difference of opinion?
Well, I chose the site I did because it was using Hubzilla, which had a plugin system to it so that you could expand on it. And so I wanted to be able to add in the ability to store game achievements. But beyond that, there wasn't any reason for it other than that the free game dev site put it up. So I said, hey, look, I can add my game achievement idea there. So that's what I did.
And you'll note from that the software isn't a locked system. It's a protocol shared among several different kinds of software, which have, with their developers jumping aboard, said, look, we want to be able to let people communicate. We don't want them to be stuck having to pay for their service by letting corporations watch what they do. These people who are running the servers, they may be watching, but most of the server contracts of service tell specifically that that's not their goal. And the same way that I feel about free software, I'm willing to trust at least some of the people who are willing to go to all the trouble to set up a server. And I chose the Mastodon art because of the terms of service that were listed there. And Dennis chose his server similarly, as did Dave and Bill. Now, do I recommend it? Well, yes, I do, but only if you are interested in social networking. It's not something that I think that NatickFOSS needs to set up our own server, but we could if that were something somebody wanted to invest some money in, because it does take money to operate the server and to maintain it and to upgrade it and all that kind of stuff. And I don't think we really need to do that, because you might have your own interests as a community interest that goes beyond NatickFOSS and can find a server that fits the community you're interested in that's outside of the free software area. And I'll leave it by just saying, if you're interested in taking a closer look, the thing to do is to go to the link joinmastodon.org, which will connect you with both a background of how it works and a list of servers that are available for you to consider. And or you can talk to people who have connected, obviously, and maybe find someone helping you to decide that Mastodon Radio, if you're a ham radio person, or if you're a Linux nut, there are servers that are designed specifically around that, and I will list a couple of the servers on this page when it goes up live tomorrow or the next day.
Algot, I have a question.
Ask away.
Suppose you have a couple of things that you're interested in, like, say, gardening and needlework, which don't have too much overlap. Can you join two different Mastodon groups?
Yes, you can, very easily. It's simply a matter of requesting, in some cases, an account. Depending on the person running the server, you may find that that person says, look, I don't have the resources to just make an open server where 100,000 people will want to join up. So you may have to request a promotion from one of the persons who's already on that server, or they'll have a pathway that lets you contact the server administrator and say why you want to join.
Okay.
But you don't have to set up an account on a garden one and an account on a needlework one. You can set up one account and still follow people on the other server and respond to them.
Okay.
It's really a question of whether you wish to subdivide your identity. Mm-hmm. If, for example, you decided that it was important to you to talk flowers and botany 90% of the time, you'd want to have that as your primary server and just probably link to your other interests by following accounts on the other server. But if you wanted to split more like 50-50, you could have two different accounts so that you could dedicate one to the flowers and dedicate the other to the crafts. And it's totally up to you. I know some people who have 5 different servers accounts.
Okay, and another question, do you need to install anything on your computer, or do you just use any browser?
The method by which I connect is a browser client that the original author of Mastodon put together. It's the multi-column that I showed you a moment ago. Let me go back there. That's here. This multi-column image is the web client. There are also desktop clients that are little server software packages that you can install. There are also several for the smartphones that don't have this look about them because they're designed for the small screen of a cell phone. And those are not generally made by the author of Mastodon. They're made by people who wanted a better client than this multi-column one, which was available right from the beginning from the guy who designed Mastodon software.
Okay.
I have half-baked thoughts, and maybe other people are ahead of me on this. Let me mention a few of them first before I forget, and then we'll pick them apart, okay? Item one, thank you guys. You're ahead of me. I've had Mastodon on my back burner, getting ready to look at it for at least a year now, so I'm glad I'm getting pushed. Whether it's that or something else. Now, everything else being equal, I would prefer Mastodon of all the ones I've seen so far. First of all, it is federated. It's not in one home base. And the name of it is the name of what we're using. I think if we were to run our particular group on one that's about games, it's not dishonest, but it's just misleading enough as to what the main purpose is. That I prefer Mastodon if everything else is equivalent. My third question, this one I know is a question, is do we know how safe Mastodon is from collecting all the names and putting you on bad lists, etc., compared to the other alternatives?
My sense is that Mastodon server administrators are the core question for that answer. You would want to make sure that you joined a server whose administrator was right up front about how they wanted to run their community.
Assuming it's the right direction, yes. Well, my personal thought would be, let's just, you have it up already, I gather, but you're not yet using it, the NatickFOSS one?
No. NatickFOSS does not have a community server. NatickFOSS would have to invest in having server instance, they're called, or were called early, set up. There are host services. One place is called Masto Host, I believe. I will add that to my page once I remember what its actual server name is, where you can pay for a container of some sort and run a local to NatickFOSS server. But I don't know that we need that. I think it's quite nice that Bill and Dave, for example, have joined the ham radio server and connected to me by following my account on the art server. There is a server called fosstodon.org, I believe, and I'll double check that. But it's just a server running a community.
Well,
And
if
you
that
don't you don't need to have your local community on your own. You can be part of this larger federation unless you want to kind of sequester and limit access. I don't know that I would recommend that because I think it probably costs a fair amount of money. I have not researched that part of it because it didn't seem like the approach we would necessarily want to take, since the only way that would be really practical would be to say everybody in the NatickFOSS group has to join in order to have enough going on to replace something like the mailing list, which I think does its job very nicely. And we still don't have everybody in the group actually signed up there even. And that's been running for maybe 3 or 4 years by now.
Well, you surprised me only because I had a different image ahead of time. I thought it was for a group for NatickFOSS, and I thought that was available for free. In fact, I thought you'd set one up on mastodon.art or something like that.
Well, there was a setup done for the other program. What was it? It was Mobilizon. If you look at my shared screen now, this is the Mobilizon group.
Ah,
It's not a Mastodon software thing. It's a completely separate process.
and you were going to suggest talking about that also.
But maybe
Yes.
not today.
Well, we have covered some of Mobilizon in the past. This is a page that I referred to 3-4 months ago, I guess it was when it came up. And at that time, it didn't seem like it was as significantly interesting as maybe we might have wanted, because it is really more a question of announcements and some background discussions, maybe, but we have those things through the web page that you run, plus the mailing list, plus our monthly meetings. And unless we're talking about gathering new people for the group, which was Mobilizon as a possibility, along with Get Together, which was a thing we tried over a year ago. And if you look at the Get Together, that's just an image there on the screen. As of the time that I took this image, there were 2 people who thought it was interesting enough to become part of. And
Yep.
I don't want us to begin to fragment at this point from one thing to another, to another, to another, just so we have the pathways. And I think that the social media aspect is a good parallel aspect without drawing us away from our core purpose of communicating about free software together.
So if I understand you correctly, I think we should be continuing to be present here and get it a little more up to date and complete, perhaps, so people can find us. And maybe
Well-
there's 5 others like this we should get on as well for that. But as for active discussion, I think you're suggesting we don't even start our own. We just use some of the existing ones.
Yes.
Is
I
that-
think that Mastodon has enough servers out there that are stable and potentially enduring that we shouldn't set up our own unless that turns out to be a real drive from within the group.
So would you say that an immediate decision could be made right during the meeting now to tell all our members which several addresses they could start using immediately to try it out and get used to it?
I would say that it would be a little premature to tell people which of the servers are the best, because I haven't done any effort to look beyond Mastodon Art and the earlier Mastodon Social and the parallel early one, Mastodon Cloud. I had an earlier account not on Mastodon Social, which is the flagship instance, flagship server for the whole cluster of Mastodon people, but it's huge. It has 100,000 people on it. And I didn't want to be part of that near silo. I wanted to be on something a little bit more sidelined than that, and found myself a home, as I like to look at it, at Mastodon Art, because I do a lot of clip art with Inkscape, and I thought that that was an appropriate place to land. I would leave it to other people to decide where they want to go, with maybe a list of 3 or 4 stable ones to choose from. You can and probably will consider moving if you start at a server that turns out not to be to your liking. Mastodon software, the server part of it, has an extremely efficient move my account capability. So you can start one place and say, oh, well, this group just isn't the group I thought it was. And after some research, find a better home at an academic oriented one, a writers oriented one, a poetry oriented one, an art, music. I mean, there are all sorts of different things, gardening, crafts. There are lots and lots and lots of servers out there. And it's more a question of whether you pick one that is really small or you pick one that is moderately large and has been stable for a year before you decide to join.
And does joining mean paying money?
No, it does not require you to pay money.
So
However, let me add to that by saying most servers are run by somebody who is volunteering to do the job. And there are a group of people that are also volunteering to make sure, through what they call moderation, that bad actors do not take over the server. There are people out there who would come into a server and begin to just be nasty and nasty and nasty and nasty and nasty over and over again, posting things and being mean to others. Those people are requested to tone down their posts, stop being stupid, and if they refuse and or get nastier, they are booted. The server won't accept them back. So this is a safe community. It is a community that is very, very, very open to a lot of alternate lifestyles, so you wouldn't want to be shocked by that. There will be people talking about lesbianism and being transgendered and all the things that you might find a little bit odd. But the discussions that happen are discussions that are thoughtful, from my experience. They're not rude. They're not blatantly sexual. They're not angry. There are some sad people on board, but that's true pretty much anywhere you go.
Sounds,
I would
sounds
like
good.
to-
I like the no trolls.
It sounds like it ought to be very useful. And I guess I'd like to invite the 4 of you who are already up to speed on something like this, and include me, please, and anyone else who wants to be, as soon as we have a consensus on what we can suggest, we can fan it out. But I guess it doesn't go in this. I guess the conclusions won't be in this afternoon's coverage. It'll be a separate mail out, I guess, once we know what we want to say. And as far as I'm concerned, I'd love to start trying it. I'm glad you're so far ahead of me on it. And I look forward to something we can do. You've also told me that we don't have to advance money in front.
I forgot to finish my earlier comment. I give through either Patreon or LibraPay, depending on the organization. And I don't remember which one I use for the mastodon.art server. I pay a support donation on a regular basis because it has been my impression that the stability of the server depends on the strength of its membership. And
Understood, Algot. But
bunch-
what I don't want to do is tell people that they have to pay money.
No, it's totally voluntary.
So, Algot, that'll be a paragraph in whatever we end up sending out.
Sounds good.
And I see them everywhere. It would be easy to pick up a good one or the one what you prefer to write instead. My question is, does it become an upfront obstacle for anyone? And the answer seems to be no.
Absolutely not.
Does it become an unusual level of risk for anyone? The answer seems to be no. Does it promise to likely be enjoyable and valuable? The answer seems to be yes. Let's do it. You guys tell us when and how.
I will finish then by asking if anyone on this list wishes not to have their account listed. Dennis, do you care one way or the other?
Nope, that's fine. I tell it to everyone I meet, so.
Dave?
Is he still here?
Guess not.
Perhaps not. I'll send him a message, probably via Mastodon, which does have direct messaging capabilities. That's one of the nice things about this. There are a whole nice level of ways to communicate. Wide open in the public, only for your followers, not listed on the public timeline, and just direct message to those people you put the name to. So it's very, very effective as a communication tool at lots of levels. Bill, did you stick around?
Yeah, I'm here. I'd suggest everybody get their ham radio license so they can come join us over there.
That's a thing of my distant past wishes.
Yeah, you know I had to say it.
I knew it.
Well said. So it sounds like we're going to have a go. We just don't have it today, but we'll have it soon. Good. Anything else on that topic? We have one we haven't touched for many months, and Jill has some good examples from my spam mail collection that I thought were ones worth mentioning, sharing with you, having you share with others as good examples of things to worry about before you click. You know, they all come with the click me call attached to them one way or another.
Junk mail stuff.
And
If you will turn off your microphone, I will turn on my microphone, which I think will. No. Just click on the turn off the microphone there. Okay.
we're getting there.
Well, we try that. Is that working for people?
Put up
Yes.
the Zoom if you can
Okay
do
for me.
it.
Okay. So let me go to the screen share. Application window. And here you see my folder where I keep particularly egregious looking scam emails. I used to send them out to people, but we ended up getting blacklisted by a bunch of servers, so people couldn't get our emails. And I used to send them out as examples, but I don't do that anymore. So this is my chance. This one came in and I almost got caught by it. There were two tells on it. One was,
What is it about?
this one says, go check your credit scores because they may have changed. Well, we recently bought a car, and so our credit scores have changed, and I thought I would check it. On the other hand, this is to Jill. It says Jill@millermicro.com, not my personal name. And secondly, the return address was Drone Expo News, which seemed a little odd. So I hovered on their click here. And down at the bottom, you can see that it's going to droneexponews.com. And I said, no, I don't think I will click. But that one was almost caught me. The next one is, and it came in the same day, about an hour later. Check your eligibility for the Tax Fresh Start program. Well, it's not something that we have to worry about. IRS writes off millions in tax debt, but it's the kind of thing that would be newsworthy. And so I, again, almost got caught by it. And I checked on check your availability, and it's going to thegloballearning.com.
Prior to interrupt, Jill did not click on it. She just moved her cursor over it. And that's very important for people who don't know. Do not click on any link until you have a reason to trust it, not just to see if you have a reason to trust it.
Furthermore, the reply to up here is weird. This is not a person's name. This is a randomly generated list of letters. And again, thegloballearning.com. Well, it's possible the global learning might be something that tells you about stuff. But when it says remove wage garnishment and penalties, blah, 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 it just seemed a bit suspicious. And there's a click here to unsubscribe. I never click on those either, because then they know that the email they sent it to is a legitimate email. It didn't bounce. So that's my short story for today. And that is all.
Thank you. And coming, I guess you can click back on my set of it, and let me take a look here.
So it's back.
Oh, there we go.
That's
The
slow.
only thing I think that we haven't done yet is, meanwhile, back in hot internet, we talked about the container ship at the very beginning, but I didn't show you two links I thought were worth knowing about. You'll have the link. One of them is Maritime Traffic Live Ships map. You will see the world. You can zoom in. You can look at a detailed section of the Suez Canal. You can click on any one icon for any one ship. You'll find they have 2 or 3 different kinds of icons for different kinds of ships, but they're a little vague in their usage. You can actually type in the name or the ID number of a known ship and find it. If you have friends on a cruise, you can track their cruise. If you are looking for the Ever Given, you can type in the name and it comes up with it and finds it for you and tells you where it is, where it's going next, when it's due to arrive, etc.
A lot of them are sort of generic, like like fishing vessel without a name.
You can often bring up a picture anyway. most amazing. So
I have definitely done this when my parents were on a cruise.
it's great fun.
Yeah,
And
there-
it's great power at your fingertips, which is quite impressive. And I can tell you that during the past week, it was running kind of slow for some reason.
Yeah. And when they get home from their cruise, I can give them a
The final one I want to mention is our own Money is Not Wealth. This is a site with topics of personal interest. It includes FOSS, and it includes other things. And come on, I know you can do this. Interesting. Once again, my computer is arguing with me. Nothing new there.
Oh, you don't have enough.
I see what happened. I'll be there in a moment. Got to find my browser. This is hiding down a level. And having found my browser, there we go. This is our site, Money is Not Wealth. And in it, there's 4 immediate choices. There's a special section on coronavirus. There's a section some of you will enjoy looking at, the Miller 3-Day Work Week. There's Black humor. That's where the cartoons go and more. And the newest news posts. I'll go to newest news posts for now. And then you can do a Control F for find. And down in the lower left, I've got a little find box here. And I will type in, for instance, Suez. And it went to the first item for Suez. The Suez is lit in green. These are in date order, newest ones on the top. So there may be some really useful ones way down below. If there are, I'll usually reference them in one of these recent articles if I think, oh, you got to see that old one too. So between Suez and Ever Given, I expect you'd find most of the ones on this topic very quickly. And that's all. I happen to have picked a lot of good ones on this topic without picking a huge number. So if you wanted to look in more deeply, I recommend that. And you might find other things we're both interested in, etc. That's it for everything I had. Does anyone else have anything they want to bring up at this meeting?
Dick, can you hear me?
Yes.
Before you, maybe at the end of it, you can work with me. You're the only one that I can't see anything happening on the screen. I can see Jill, I can see everybody else, but I can't see you. When you do come up, work.
Oh, you have to stop sharing.
Excuse me?
Oh, you mean my image of myself?
No, just.
Are you seeing this image of the web page?
No, I am not. That's what happens. I do for a while and then it freezes. But that doesn't mean everyone else works.
Your connection is red, which means that it's a poor connection.
I wonder if well, why is it poor for Dick only and it's great for you, Jill? When you logged on, I saw all your screens and it went back to you when you were finished. With Dick.
So check on the 3-dot menu and see if it tells you that you're in low bandwidth mode and you can disable low bandwidth mode. If it shifts back to low bandwidth mode, then you've got an actual bad connection. Sometimes I accidentally connect on my slow access point and I have to shift to the high-speed access point.
Okay.
Charlie, I suggest we talk after the meeting.
All right, that'd be good.
Can
That would be good.
I'm going to suggest that you phone us right when we stop the meeting.
Okay.
And then we'll set up a test pattern and we'll talk on the phone and through this.
All right, that would be helpful if you're willing to do it.
Sure.
Great.
Happy to help.
This is the first time it's happened. Up to now, I've had great performance.
I think it has to be you and not me, only because others aren't having it.
Okay.
But we'll find out.
All right.
Good. Anything else for this meeting, folks?
Well, I would like to ask if Olga would be willing to give us a presentation on Inkscape.
Oh,
which I used years ago for garden plans, but a lot of people seem to be using it for totally different things, and I haven't looked at it for a while, and I'd really like to get up to date again on it. Is that something you were willing to do, Algot?
That would be my great pleasure.
done. So not done, but guaranteed to be done. Excellent.
I would like that also, because it's something I want to be able to use and haven't been able to figure out.
Well, I've been using it steadily since 2010. And if you go to my website, runeman.org, and click on the images, you can see how badly I started out with it and see how adequately I have progressed. But I'd be very, very happy to make a very short or very long presentation. You guys think about that.
Okay,
Yes,
let's
Algood.
do it.
I've been using Inkscape and other tools to try to handle PDFs and fill out PDF forms, but I'm sure there's so much more that could be done with it.
Indeed.
Looking forward to it, and maybe for return rounds as well. I was told that it's so simple only a child can do it, but I'll be glad to be proved wrong.
Well, then we need a child.
Yeah.
Good. I think we're closing this session. Thank you all for joining us now or later, and we'll see you again next month. Bye-bye.
Thanks and goodbye.
Good night. Good night, all.
Dickie is still there?